Welcome to Homesteading Roots, a podcast by Ozarks Homesteading, where we dig into the roots of some of my favorite people who are making a difference in their communities and beyond. We share about events we think you shouldn't miss and explore the faith that keeps it all going. I hope you'll enjoy listening. Let's dig in. Welcome to Homesteading Roots podcast. This is Cheryl Franklin. I'm your host as usual. And this is a time where we talk to people about things that are going on in the homesteading, agriculture world, and people that are making difference in their communities and frankly in this nation. And I am so glad to have Joel Hollingsworth of Smoke River Ranch with me today in his taking time out in his busy schedule. How are you doing, Joel?
Doing quite well. Grateful if you had me on, Cheryl.
I'm so glad to have you here because this is a little bit different today. It's Joel's like somebody that I kind of wanted people to know. You actually don't live far from me. Actually, where's your ranch?
Do you know where Grand Lake is at?
Yeah, what's your post office address?
I'm in Strang.
You're Strang. You're Strang.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm on the Neosho River, just a couple miles under the dam at Grand Lake.
Is.
Yeah, so for the general people, I'm about an hour east of Tulsa.
Okay, yeah. So tell us a little bit about. We're going to have a really interesting conversation today, but first, let's tell people about Smoke River Ranch and how did that begin?
So, super interesting story. I got a Greg Judy style low-cost lease in Virginia back in 2019. It was a recreational horse farm where she had lost her tax deduction because she stopped wanting to get the subsidy money for not growing cotton or soy on the land. And then she realized all of a sudden, well, if I'm not a farmer because I'm not being paid not to grow things, now I have to pay taxes. And they call that craziness.
Yeah,
and she had been trying to find a farmer to rent some of the excess ground from them. And everybody was wanting to rent ground, was trying to do cotton or soy and spray a ton of chemical on the ground. She wasn't interested in that because her whole little natural horsemanship community was all very much into natural things.
That's
and
great.
We met her through a providential series of events, and she's like, I just wish I could find one of those young people who want to do that Joel Salatin or Greg Judy kind of like regenerative grazing thing. I'd rent them some land for really cheap, and then they could just get going and make their money on the cows. I was like, I'll do it, because I had gotten into being really curious about regenerative agriculture because of health issues. So Crohn's disease had pushed me down the rabbit hole about Weston Price, and then I kind of, like a lot of us do, I followed the holistic health path all the way back down to the soil because the soil is where our health comes from, right? And the challenge was always, well, I dream about doing this. How can I ever afford to? And so I got the low-cost lease. I signed that. It was 28 acres for $1 a year. And I had no money for cows, but I felt God was in it. So I just went ahead and said, yeah, I'll do it. And so started putting fencing in, just posting videos on Twitter. And my Twitter following had been growing because I'd been getting a little active on Twitter for that last year or so. And I got DM'd by a wealthy Wall Street guy. He was like, hey, I went in on this little regenerative grazing project you're doing. I was like, no, you don't. I'm going to use Heritage breed horned and spotted swamp cows, piney woods, and I'm going to try to raise zombie apocalypse cattle, and I'm going to try to push the edge of regenerative grazing science because I've got some ideas I want to play with. I said, there's no money in this. You're never going to make a dime. This makes no sense from a business standpoint to step into it with me. You're insane to want to tell me you want to do that. And he wrote me back this letter, and he explained to me, he goes, look, I'm from like the hedge fund investment banking world. Our research is showing the U.S. is starting to get positioned on a more war footing with China. Most of our cattle feed supplements, like the amino acids, a lot of the medical inputs, all that comes from China. He said, I'm really worried about food security, not just measured by like calories stockpiled in the basement, but by food quality. And this was 2019 rolling into 2020 before COVID. He goes, I'm also concerned about being debanked for my political beliefs. And put really succinctly, I'm tired of holding my assets in exchange-traded funds that are managed by BlackRock, where they buy up assets to extract from them and lease them back to my children broken. He said, I want to own real things inside of real relationships that make the world I want my children to inherit be the world that exists. I was like, okay, like I think we're sort of aligned here. And so we put our heads together. We came up with the Herdshare program. So he bought the initial breeding stock. And then every year when the calves are weaned, we split the calves. The lion's share of the calves go to me as the farmer to fund it. I cover all the operational expenses. It's just sharecropping brought to cattle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then COVID happens. And all of a sudden, everybody gets concerned about all the same things. Being debanked for political beliefs, food security, grocery store shelves are empty. And my phone starts blowing up with all his friends calling me, like, hey, those herd share things. Can I get some cows and have them, you run them for us too? I was like, well, no, I don't have enough land here in Virginia, but yeah, we'll figure it out. So we got some friends together, moved over here to Oklahoma, bought 700 acres, brought those first 15 cows over to Oklahoma with us, and then just scaled in and started adding families to the community. And we went from those 15 cows to this summer, we're breeding 425 animals, and we have about 40 families participate and own cattle on the ranch with us. And in those brief time of years from February 2022 till now, my background in kind of business economics and understanding how a lot of the like civilization farm crisis works has collided with my boots on the ground experience starting a farm from zero. And I've gotten sucked into speaking with Acres USA around the country, consulting with Maha on some of the regenerative agriculture think tanks, and it's just been a blast. I got
Wow.
introduced to Johann Zietzman pretty early along the way from a friend threw me in a chat group with him. So I got to pester the best grazer in the world who developed all the
Wow.
cutting edge stuff that's now starting to slowly roll out across the world. I've picked his brain to death until he just was done being bothered by me. No, he's great. I love the South African grazers. They're the best in the world, but they're all these like they're all crotchety optimists, and I love it. They're just like these grumpy realists that are still hopeful, and they'll take all the time in the world to help you because they truly care, but they'll be grumpy while doing it. Like they're all great, great guys. I love them all. The South Africans are my favorite people. But yeah, so that's our story. That's kind of how
So
we
you
got to what
start.
we're doing
That's
now.
how you got in. So explain. Are you still? Are all your cattle piney woods?
So we're building our own custom grass composite, following Johann Zietzman's breeding philosophies. So our female stock is all piney woods, or I found as many Gulf Coast Corriente as I could for kind of that
Oh
hardy
yeah.
Spanish stock. And then
Hmm.
I'm running composite bulls on top of them with just a bunch of diverse hardy bloodlines. We're using African Mashona. We've got some Thule, got some Baran. We've got some Old Line Angus, got some French Mountain Cow Aubrac. I've got some like Mashona South Pole composite. Got a little bit of Murray Gray in one of the composites. So we've got a big mix, and then we just have the whole breeding system, which I could nerd out on for weeks.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah,
But
yeah. I
just
know. I
use
love the piney
basically,
woods. I always wanted piney woods. I never knew anybody who had any, except for some livestock conservancy friends that don't live around here.
yeah, they're great hardy little cows. I love them. And
Yeah.
then we're just grazing them under pressure at high density. So we've got the animals where 425 animals are all grazing at about a half an acre of grazing space and then being moved 6 times a day. So we
Wow.
pack them tight, high utilization grazing. They're back walking, drinking out of a common muddy water spot, minimal shade. And then we're just tracking fertility and using aggravated natural selection with fertility as the catch all, as the breeding metric while under pressure. And then
Wow.
trying to breed the heifers young at 14 or 15 months, keeping the bulls intact from the heifers that breed and calve before 2 and before 3, weeding both calves successfully at 50% of her weight. We'll keep the bulls from those best moms, multi-sire them, DNA test to see which bulls sired the most calves as a yearling,
Okay.
keep those as 2-year-olds, and then just rinse repeat, letting nature, early sexual maturity be the catch-all for like which is the best performing animals.
Wow, that's great. That's great.
Hmm
That's. So you moving them with fence, or are you using like GPS systems or?
We used Polyline for years. We've moved over to virtual fencing. That could be a podcast in itself. We went with Gallagher. I'm not super happy with Gallagher. Um, we're moving now towards actually developing our own in-house collars in collaboration with a company called Rooted Agriculture, to where we're building them from the ground up for super high intensity grazing, which most of the collar tech is designed to be applicable to the mainstream. We start with a different philosophy. If you build the race car for the high intensity guys, it'll be good for everybody.
Hmm.
So we're taking a bit of a different tact into the tech development.
Wow, that's exciting. You really went down that rabbit hole, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
But for some of our listeners, or many of them maybe, they may never have heard of a herd share. So could you explain that a little bit more about how, with nobody with no agriculture background, how does that work?
Yeah, so the strength of rural America and agriculture as an industry has always been founded on collaboration. There's always these practices of pooling resources, sharing risk, and sharing the yield. Whether you're talking about the early frontiersman families going across the wilderness moving west together, or the modern implementations of sharecropping or CSAs, like sharecropping,
Mhm.
the landlord is paid in a split of the grain yield from the farmer growing grain on the ground, or CSAs, you pay up front and then you get a share of the yield of the market garden as the vegetable are
We
produced as
don't
a
always
box
know
of
what
your weight
that's
to grain.
going to be.
Exactly. And so these kind of collaborative models are really the return to community-based, relationship-based agriculture because modern ag isn't working, right? Just the quick rundown of the numbers. The average ranch in the US loses 1.5% return on assets if you don't factor land equity appreciation. 85% of ranchers have a full-time city job to subsidize their ranch.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's horrendous. I mean, even you got the age problem where there's more ranchers over the age of 65 than under the age of
Right.
54. And so you have
Right.
the farm succession crisis, you got the farm bankruptcy crisis, and all these things. And what made rural America strong was these collaborative things of communities working together. And so we just said, well, let's return to that. And so our herd share model is basically just sharecropping with cattle. The family owned the asset, which in this case is the breeding cattle. They
Mhm.
put the animal into a grazing and boarding contract where I, as the manager, board them in a system. We all share a long term vision with clear expectations of what the goals are, and the goals for our community is zombie apocalypse genetics that are designed for high nutrient density and food security. Like, we're intentionally breeding animals that are not what you would do if you're trying to do the most financially savvy thing, which would be
Yeah.
black-eyed Angus, right? We're going all the way into the Johann Zeitzman environmentally resilient, adaptable cow, which you
Right.
don't make a lot of money doing, but for us, we care about nutrient density and then food security. And so the system's really simple. The families all own a part of the cows in the herd. One herd shares one cow. It's a cow of the herd, not a particular cow. We keep a pretty good accounting database. Every year when the calves are weaned, we just split them up. The bulk of the calves go to the farmer, which is me. I use that for just my payment, and then they get some of the yield for their ownership of the asset in the system. And then we also were replacing their animals or their breeding stock over time with younger animals as they age out. And it's super simple. The families get to own the real asset. They get to be true stakeholders in real relationship with their food production. They get the food security of animals on the hoof, and they get some yield of animals to be able to have a little bit of production to butcher over time, and a little bit of growth in case we have a bad year where they have some extra animals in case something goes wrong.
Hmm. Yeah. So you talk about food security. So do a lot of people do this or partner with you on that because of food security, or are they doing it because of the quality of the meat they get, or why are most people buying into the herd share?
There's basically two core motivations of I'm describing our community. Food security is one of the big ones, and the other one is just ideological alignment around trying to forerun solutions to fix American agriculture. Because
Really?
we as a community understand that agriculture is just not working. And so, with us not caring about making a profit, with us as a community caring about trying to restore the capacity for production in rural America again, and then us getting food security and then high quality, nutrient dense food on top of that, there's a natural incentive alignment there, which the community in the long time horizons of us caring about that is very freeing to let us also focus on the big picture issues that nobody else is willing to slow down to actually think about. Like, there's nobody working to build the cattle genetics capable of doing this high density grazing like they do in South Africa here in the US.
Mhm. Right.
There's some, but there's just like the number of them building this is just super small. Like Michael
Right.
Kinsey at River Wild Ranch in Georgia is one of the only places I brought cows in from that did well on my ranch. I've
Mhm.
tried all over the place. I've tried South Pole, I've tried Faro Angus, I've done all sorts of experiments, but
Really?
they're not really bred well for doing high density grazing on fescue.
Mhm.
So the vision of the community with us all being willing to slow down and take a long-term view where we're not just trying to extract as much money as possible, lets us really get underneath some of these things, which hopefully will be able to be shared with others along the way as we figure some of these things out.
So are you getting, the herd share partners, are they mostly local? Are they from all over the country, or what does that look like?
We've got some local, some all over. We've got some that are ranchers just up the street that want to have access to some of our breeding stock, and so they want to hold some animals in our
Yeah.
herd, so over time they can pull some out to use to breed into their herds. Like it's a good smorgasbord of different people.
Yeah, because I was wondering again, like we were talking earlier, this is cattle country, and there's a lot of people that are just probably think you're crazy, or you get a lot of that.
Less
Or
than
how
you'd
are
think.
people perceiving you, like the locals or area ranchers?
A lot less than you'd think, where we have a local Northeast Oklahoma grazer get together. Now, granted, Dean Snyder, who's one of the leaders in the Oklahoma Grazing Lands Coalition, selected the guys who are a part of this little community. There's probably 15 of us that, on an every other month basis, go to one of each other's ranches to have a little pasture walk and then have hamburgers on the back deck together and talk cows. It's been a lot of
Mhm.
fun. I was the youngest guy in the room and the newest rancher in the room,
Um,
and they probably spend more time asking me questions than anybody else in the room. And it's just been vibrant curiosity and also just excitement to see that I'm being creative with finding a way to bring energy of a lot of collaboration back into rural community again. Because a lot of them know that things are really, they're bleak. The industry's struggling. And so to
right,
see a young guy getting creative like this, I think a lot of them appreciate it. I get some flack from some more of the mainstream kind of bigger ag sides because
right.
they don't like new creative approaches or any of that. But
It's not how we do it around here, right?
yeah, but in general, from the people in the state that I really feel like matter, I'm getting a lot of really quality support
Really,
from them.
that's great. That's
Hmm.
great. That's awesome to hear. Um, so when you so let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the news with your program. So when did you first learn that the state of Oklahoma was investigating your herd share program?
I got the first subpoena on Valentine's Day, 5 weeks before my wedding.
Oh, yeah, that's a distraction.
Yeah, I wasn't really happy about that.
And so, yeah, so what was your initial reaction with that? Were you just really taken back by that, or did you?
I hate to say it, but no good deed goes unpunished in our dysfunctional society. Like Joel
Yeah,
Salatin wrote the book "Everything I Want to Do Is Illegal: Wars from the
illegal.
Local Food Fronts," right? Like
I
we
should have worn
worked
my
with,
shirt. Yeah,
yeah, we worked with Farm to Concern Legal Defense Fund when we built our community system and the herd
right.
share program, and we'd done the work to make sure we did things the right way. But our society does not currently like anybody trying to do anything that adds value to rural America. So I expected something to go harebrained at some point. So it didn't really surprise me. The thing that
Well,
did
yeah,
surprise
it's
me
not a
was
new thing, though. Herd shares are
no,
not a thing.
it's not. I mean, custom grazing on calf splits is something that's been done in Oklahoma and rural America since basically before Oklahoma was even a state.
Right.
Um, but I mean, the only thing I did different, because a lot of people still do it, is that I scaled it in a way that's visible, because a lot of those people that are doing it just stay off the radar. One thing I've learned along the way here is that with the collapse of middle scale agriculture, all the support infrastructure for middle scale ag is basically dead. And I didn't realize it, but it even includes lawyers who have studied middle scale agriculture contract law, which is the like
Mhm,
principles of adjustment and bailment, which like
mhm,
animal boarding fits inside of those arrangements.
mhm.
And I've gone all over the country at this point since then trying to find people who've studied this stuff. And it seems like no lawyer's been taught it in the last 50 years. You
Wow.
either have mega agriculture corporate finance attorneys, or you have smaller of like these hobby farms or small agriculture of the older guys that are all just handshake deals that stay under the table. And
Right.
nobody's really doing this stuff at this kind of middle scale in a sort of public way like the way I'm doing. And so we've had to bring back a lot of these legal precedents that are still in the books that just got forgotten.
Mm.
So the thing that did surprise me, though, to answer that question, is just how egregious the subpoena process and administrative law process has been. The first subpoena was really bad. Like, they wanted everything but a colonoscopy. My lawyers pushed back on it, and the supervisors at the Oklahoma Department of Securities basically apologized to my lawyers because it was probably an illegal subpoena. It was so overreaching.
Wow.
And we thought they were going to drop it at that point, and they proceeded to quote unquote lose the first subpoena. And then they subpoenaed me again with a second one. The second one was much more constrained. They wanted every financial transaction I'd ever done. They wanted the cattle records for every cow we've ever bought or sold, every cow that born or died. They wanted all the privacy information of all of our herd share owners. And that's the one we pushed back on because we shared our contracts, we shared our herd share system, we shared our marketing materials, shared our cattle records. And we said, look, on like First Amendment, freedom of privacy of assembly, Fourth Amendment, no unreasonable search, and a couple other case precedents, we don't feel comfortable sharing our member privacy because they joined for food security during COVID out of fear of government overreach. And now here you are asking for their personal information, and the members aren't comfortable with that. And that's when the Oklahoma Department of Securities just lost their minds and started coming after me like crazy. So, like at that point, they told me they're going to, quote, pursue me with renewed vigor. They tried to manufacture into the legal record all sorts of like implications and non-compliance that my lawyers had to combat and go back and forth with them about. Um, then they started subpoenaing me and sending letters of investigation like crazy. They subpoenaed my bank account. They subpoenaed my credit card. They subpoenaed my landlord. They subpoenaed my landlord's childhood bank account he's had since he's 12, which has no touch of anything. And my landlord's bank account, it's a joint account with his father that also doesn't touch anything. Anybody who's done a transaction with me in the bank has often gotten a letter of inquiry or a text message from the Oklahoma Department of Securities. And so people who are friends with me on the internet are getting letters of inquiry. They're basically, in my opinion, trying to drum up something they can manufacture into evidence against me, or like just throw ice water over the whole community and scare people away from it.
Yeah,
Um,
it sounds like
my
that too.
my lawyers confirmed in the first week that there were no victims. There are no alleged complaints or allegations. There's no complaints. There's no allegations of fraud. No alleged victims.
Yeah, so none
Um,
of your herd share program people have ever filed any kind of complaint.
Correct. Oklahoma Department of Securities saw a video on the internet that went viral that was posted by a different Oklahoma rancher homestead mom influencer that got 2 million views and decided to go on a fishing expedition
Oh
after
yeah,
me.
Anne. Yeah, we know.
Yeah, and I
I
love
know.
them. They're
I
great.
know Anne. I love
Um,
Anne.
Luckily, like we're all still great friends. I was over swimming with their kids at the lake just over the weekend. Um, so along the way, I've learned all sorts of things about administrative law. So with administrative law, there doesn't have to be a judge to sign off on the subpoenas. They
Hmm.
have independent agency subpoena power. I don't have my typical due process of innocent until proven guilty because it's criminal or it's civil financial, not criminal. I don't have a
Wow.
Fifth Amendment because I'm required to legally participate in them fishing, trying to manufacture evidence against myself. I don't have a Fourth Amendment of no unreasonable search. I never get a place to where I can present my case before a jury because I'm not even charged. It's just an ongoing investigation that's being weaponized to bankrupt me. If I do get charged, it never goes before a jury. It goes before an administrative judge. Usually these administrative judges, or I'll say often these administrative judges, don't even have law degrees. They just got a job working with the department that's the agency that has this independent investigation power. I could appeal that all the way up to the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and I would never get a jury. So these administrative law processes and agencies, I did not realize how unconstitutional and wild all this is. So
Yeah.
we've been working with Brooke Rollins in her office from like almost the beginning. A handful of months ago, I got in contact with them. Thankfully, we've got some good connections who opened that door, and they've been great. We've had meetings with Oklahoma Secretary of Agriculture Blaine Arthur. I've met with a bunch of legislators. I met with Governor Stitt last Wednesday. That was great. He took a whole hour and 15 minutes out of his busy schedule to sit and talk with us. What we've learned is that the Oklahoma Department of Securities is basically a rogue agency. This is where it gets really crazy.
Imagine that.
There, he has no executive power over them. They're 9-year appointment terms,
Wow.
and he can't fire or remove them.
Who knew?
The Attorney General office. I've talked with the the office themselves, who are currently the Attorney General. They've not expressed any interest in directly engaging me much or helping. And I've talked to some of the people who are running for office in Oklahoma, both Mike Mazie, who's running for governor. I've talked to a bunch of the Oklahoma Freedom Caucus, and I've talked to John Eccles, who's running for Attorney General. John Eccles is not even sure if the Attorney General has any power over ODS, except for like the power of interpretation of the law, which is one of the given like actual powers of the Attorney General.
Mm-hmm.
Talking with Eccles was really interesting. His family actually sharecrops on their land. He was like, walk me through why they might even think you're a security. So I went through all the principles. It's like, under the control of the farmer making the decisions. He's like, well, we do that in our sharecropping operation. It was like, okay, we do pooled commingled accounting. He's like, well, everybody does that in sharecropping too. And I went through all these different points. And he's like, well, if you're a security, I'm a security. And we're often likely even more of a security than you are, because a lot of sharecroppers, they market it in joint together, and then they split up a cash check on the profits at the end of it. And he said, look, if you get in trouble where you're supposed to comply with these Wall Street financial laws and regulations, this is going to wreck Oklahoma agriculture, because these are laws that have never been applied to sharecropping or custom grazing or cooperative ownership of cattle breeding and genetic programs. And he's like, this is an existential threat to the industry of putting another burden on the back of these operations. So we've also learned that there are some powerful people in Oklahoma who are currently in lawsuits with ODS, from ODS doing multi-year investigations with no actual charges in an attempt to bankrupt some Oklahoma businesses they decided to target. So Oklahoma Department of Securities is currently being sued by some pretty powerful law groups and things, as well as in Oklahoma. So apparently, like, this group is just utterly rogue.
Wow.
So good times.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
how long have oh, somebody's trying to call me. So how long have some of this been going on that you've like other lawsuits and other people they've targeted for similar or
I've been told years. Apparently, Oklahoma has a bunch of agencies that don't actually have executive oversight, which has been something we've been trying to fix in the Oklahoma legislature since before I even moved to Oklahoma. And ODS is one of the groups that's not been pulled underneath of the jurisdiction of the executive yet, whereas some of the other agencies have. So I guess I get to be the guy who draws this to the surface to stay the course, to
you're the
hopefully draw
poster
some
child
attention
now.
to this
Yeah.
predicament. Yeah.
You're the poster child for this new. So you talked about financially the burden of this, but and I don't know how specific you want to get with that, but how has this experience just been personally, like, besides the big distraction and financial?
I mean, getting married while your entire business is being investigated was not the greatest thing to ever happen.
Yeah.
Trying to build trust and open a new chapter of your life, and having to take all my capital
He's
that
like,
was in.
what am I getting into here?
Yeah, exactly. And having to take all my capital in order to just even existentially defend my life and business, rather than building a cabin and starting having kids like we'd planned, has been a challenge. The community, including Erin as my wife, has all been incredible. Most of the Herdshares owners, we had like a big group call early on about it all, and they were all just like, well, look, we got together because we expected the government to do stupid things to ruin our food security, and the government's doing stupid things trying to ruin our food security.
Just like we thought.
Yeah, just like
Which
we
is
thought would
what
happen. Well, I'm glad you're up for the job, Joel. Yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's been really redemptive too, where I just keep hearing over and over, like, what the enemy intends for evil, God uses for good. and the new friendships and the political connections and the new allies. And there's so much being built where I can see if we can survive this, it's going to become a launch pad to help and like do good things. I mean, not only for us and building some of this capacity for us to grow from all these new relationships and connections, but even like we're doing the work that a lot of people wish was happening to clear out more space for freedoms in America, right? Like
Right.
we worked with Farm to Conserve Legal Defense Fund, and this is a perfect chance for us to wade in and actually create some good legal precedent and clarity for other farms to follow in our footsteps. Or like Pacific Legal was in conversations with us where they're considering taking on our case as a way to go after independent subpoena power of these agencies that doesn't have to follow judicial due process.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Pacific Legal was like, "You up for a fight?" And I'm like, "Hey, as long as I'm not alone, I'm up for anything. I don't
Oh, yeah,
mind
that's
fighting.
great.
It's the bankruptcy and feeling drowning alone that I don't like."
This is the kind of
um,
thing they like to get involved in.
yeah, and that was one of the things I told Governor Stitt when we were talking was, look, like our herd share community is donating to fund a legal battle. And these are the people that the Oklahoma Department of Security supposedly is saying they're trying to protect. And we're going around in a circle, wasting state resources to protect the people who are donating to fund legal fees to fight the people who say they're protecting those people who are donating. Like, round and round we go.
Yeah, did
Um,
he shake his head?
oh yeah.
Yep.
So he was great, and he's in the process of writing a letter to ODS and tell him to cease and desist. And then we've got a bunch of legislators, like the Oklahoma Freedom Caucus, is going to go loud publicly about it and try to put some weight on Oklahoma Department of
Mhm.
Securities.
So
Um,
what has that meant to you? Like now that you're getting some people in your corner that um are shaking their head as well and trying to, and just try to mitigate this for you.
yeah, this is something I told Aaron early on when the legal costs were starting to get expensive. Is I felt called into doing this, and I bet my life on saying building community and invested in relationships is more valuable than trying to maximize a bank account and doing something alone. And we've raised $135,000 already for the legal defense. And that's just because we have strong community around us who just believe in what we're doing.
Right.
And not only that, a part of my original thesis was that the country is getting more and more chaotic, which we could go into lots of details about that and why. But I'd rather have a bunch of families in my corner versus facing the future chaos alone for the next 40 years.
Right.
And the way that we actually got the meeting with Governor Stitt, it was really interesting. Joe Lonsdale, who is a billionaire, early founder in Palantir, who supposedly had an awakening from kind of more left leaning to more conservative beliefs and values, is a follower of one of our Herdshares owners and friends on Twitter who reposted our legal situation. He saw it, texted Governor Stitt because they're buddies and he has Governor Stitt's number and said, "Hey, you got an Oklahoma rancher. You need to look into this situation." And then he messaged back on Twitter and said, "Governor Stitt's good people. He's looking into it for you." And
Wow.
then providentially, we just happened to intersect with Mike Mazzei's campaign team and his brother and sister-in-law at a get-together talking about the Inola smelter,
Hmm.
which is a big thing. I don't want to
Yeah.
get into details about
Yeah.
that too much.
Yeah.
But I ended up helping them with some of the environmental research around the impact of the fluoride from the smelter in the Northeast Oklahoma ranch land. They've been really receptive, actually. We've had some really good conversations about how to build heavy industry while also not getting into trouble, causing harm to agriculture. I really do think they care. I want to make that like that's worth sharing here if anybody's looking at Oklahoma politics right now. Like they're truly trying to look at this in a really good way. But the Mazie team just jumped right in to help us, and then they immediately send a message to Governor Stitt's office, and they're like, "Hey, this is a really frivolous thing they're doing to this young rancher. He really seems to be somebody solid, and he knows a lot of the people we know in the community, and they vouch for him." And so Governor Stitt got a 1-2 punch of Joe Lonsdale and then the Mazie team.
Yeah.
And that's been really validating for me that investing in becoming somebody worthy of good relationships and favor. Like I've always told my team from day one, like our number one duty is to maintain connection to God's favor because we're trying to do something larger than us. And you can't do the impossible on your own strength and wisdom. And it's your
Sure.
character that enables God to move with you. And investing in that and investing in quality relationships to where, like, we've had a lot of families that wanted to join in Herdshares, and I would just wouldn't even let them because they just weren't aligned. They weren't the high character kind of families we wanted. We've really vetted and selected well the families in our circle. And to have those people in the corner with me and their relationships and the doors they can open and the favor they bring and the weight of the reputation character that comes with that. Like our letters of support are
Yeah.
incredible from so many people in the industry as well as some of the community members. And that
It's,
has been something that's been both really encouraging and also really humbling because it just shows how much of what we depend on in this world is stuff that's not about you. You can't control it. But that way of approaching the world with faith is something that I believed was the right way to do it. And to see that pay off has been just really gratifying. It's humbling because it shows you're powerless, but it also is it just wells up so much deep gratitude because you're not alone, and it shows that it's not about perfection. It's about the grace of doing it together and what comes with that when you invest in the right places and the right people.
yeah, and when you have, troubles come your way, you just never know where it's going to lead. You're like, oh no, this is going on, but it could be actually a blessing, at some
Yeah.
point. But yeah, that's
Like
how do you think? Why do you think this resonates with so many people as well, though?
I think we're fed up with outsourcing so much of what our life depends upon on unaccountable third parties and bureaucracies because bureaucracies have no heart. It's like that
Right.
old thing from IBM, like a computer should never make a management decision because a computer cannot be held accountable. A computer doesn't care. A
Yeah.
bureaucracy is basically the same thing. A bureaucracy is a computer made up of people where nobody cares. And we see that over and over again, like the fake avocado oil scam, the Taylor Farms poop lettuce,
Right.
um the like thing that's coming out about ground meat at a lot of these grocery stores are starting to be mixed with fillers without it being disclosed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean,
Right.
all the way forward to what Molly Englehart just posted. I think it was yesterday about how much the beef industry is giving so many hormones that the steers are producing milk because their hormones are so out of whack. And and
Yeah.
the bureaucratic regulatory
And the
agencies,
children that are eating this beef too are being affected as well with
yeah.
early
And so
puberty things and
and so the regulatory agencies and the bureaucracies, they're all bought and paid for, and we all know it.
yeah.
Because what's happened is we've served the god of profit at all costs, and they've made a bunch of money, and they use that money to consistently smooth the road for themselves at the expense of the health of our nation. And we all hunger to get back to a world of connection and relationship and health, relationship with the land, relationship with each other. And that's what my community has been trying to do is to build a structure of collaboration and relationship to where we're only dependent upon people whose hearts we actually know. And there's a beauty and a realness in that. And it's a hunger that I think a lot of us shares that resonate with people. And to
Hmm.
see that that is getting resisted when it's the root of who we are as Americans, of local freedoms and self reliance upon our own communities that's made our nation so strong from its founding, it really draws a really sharp line between what the nation's becoming versus who we are and who we hunger to return to being. And I think that's where a lot of the energy that's behind us comes from is that people see us as a banner that's making a statement of what really matters again and who do we want to be as a country.
Right. Yeah. And it's encouraging to see so many people too, that are just coming into that realization and knowledge and banding together, um, with that. It's just it's encouraging too, especially even young people, as well, um, with you know concerns about what they feed the family and that maybe they might not be able to. I see more people reading labels these days too, so, in the grocery store. Um, so, um, so despite everything that's going on, um, what um, what gives you hope?
Good
For the
question.
range and your family, and just and the you can go as far as that as you want, right?
One of the things that, as it was an early theme of my life, was back in 2010, God brought me a mentor who I call my sage. He's been a father figure to me. And he told me basically on day one, he said, if your father was a king and a creator, what would he train his sons to be? And he rooted my life in these principles of
That's good.
understanding that miracles take a lot of hard work, even when you're not alone, because you have to hold open the space until they arrive. And you look at the Bible stories of King David or Moses or Joshua, and that's a very true theme that holds, right? And
Hmm.
he spent over 10 years with me, helping me root into my heart and understanding that that beloved son relationship with God has to be the biggest thing in my universe. Because when it is either success or defeat, victory or failure, neither of them become weighty enough to outweigh that. Like King David, like the one thing I seek is to dwell in the house of the Lord and gaze upon his beauty all the days of my life, right? And
Yeah.
having that center be strong enables you to not be distracted by good or bad. And then layering that with the quality of relationships that we're surrounded with as a community and all the new, even quality of relationships we've been making along the way is really encouraging because there's a hunger, as we were just talking about, to return to what we all really want this nation to be. And there's starting to be a line in the sand drawn where up until this last handful of years, it was hard to know what to do to try to fix things because
Right.
everything's such a Gordian knot of problems in the country. Where do you start?
Hmm.
And there's this movement starting to happen to where we're finding common ground around our health and food system
Yeah.
and localism and reconnection of relationships around this. And I find that common ground and the momentum behind it and the people willing to start standing there really encouraging. Um, the fact that there's so much momentum from the grassroots of the common person all the way up to the big political movers and shakers and legislators in Oklahoma all the way up to the national level with Brooke Rollins is it's pretty incredible to have this time in our country where it's a giant Gordian knot. It's all a mess. I probably could go into the details of that mess more than anybody, black pill and get discouraged about it. But there truly are people that care despite how much of a mess it is to untangle that knot. And I see that as a wave of momentum building where I don't think it's going to be solvable from the top down, but I think the grassroots of that awakening heart is going to start to swell in a way that enables us to get our country back. And I find that really encouraging. And I find it a privilege to be somebody who gets to stand at the cusp of pushing and helping create that.
Hmm. Yeah. And people are, you're just drawing attention. You're putting a spotlight on some of the things that people care about, and again, don't know where to go, don't know how to fix. So you're getting an audience too with some, legislators and governors and even other Maha people would be is encouraging. Is so what if you could sit down, like, over coffee with some of these regulators, that, not in court, but over coffee. I mean, what would you tell them, as Joel? What would you tell them that they need to understand about agriculture?
We've tried to invite them to those conversations. They just haven't been willing to.
They didn't want to come.
But basically, I would tell them that our community has no interest whatsoever in profit or financial gain. We are just simply trying to work together from a place of shared heart to lead forth the restoration of rural America and our food system. And we're trying to do that through working together for our own food security and our own quality of food, and using our long time horizons of how much we care about that together to clear the way of doing that for others. That all they need to do is come see the character of the people here, not just me and my wife or the guys working at the ranch, but come meet the character of some of the herd runners who are willing to come and join us for coffee too, to see the quality of these people and the way they see the world and what they're thinking about. Because all it would take is 5 minutes and it would become really obvious that not only does this fail the Howey test and the legs of what determines a security, because it's not for financial gain, it's for consumption, it's contract and asset laws underneath agistment bailment, and on and on and on. But that the intellectual caliber, the heart and ethos and the spirit of this community is the very thing that these people probably want to exist in our state, and that you're destroying something that's good for the state and for the country.
Right. So how can people support, say, local farms, regardless of where they live,
Yeah,
to help further this, just enlightenment, really.
so in Oklahoma, we've been asking everybody to reach out to their legislator. We've got some template and form letters. I can give you a link to those to post them underneath the
That'd
interview.
be great.
We've got a GoFundMe, which is helpful because I believe we're going to win this. We've got pretty good footing and a pretty good path forward to a light at the end of the tunnel. But the process is the punishment in these cases. And that's something we have to better weather and survive, and the financials of that are hurting pretty bad right now. Um, so I'll share that with you as well. But then the biggest thing is just a lot of these places where we're fighting the bureaucracy and the just dysfunction are won in the court of public opinion. And where we slow down and take the time to know each other at a human level and to build real reputation and to get to know each other's communities and to get our stories out there and then link arms and stand together to share that heart of who we are and what we know, that will of the people to be heard is ultimately the thing that keeps us from being silenced by the dysfunctional bureaucracies.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate the support we've had on social media of people who do know me, who have watched our community and come out and visited the ranch. And we've been friends at different conferences and places where we've met, or brought and sold cows together, or we'll come by and helped you with a day, or you came by and helped me when I needed something. And how adamant those people have been on social media and messaging their legislators and just making sure that we don't get drowned by the dysfunction, but get a true chance to be heard. And that it often feels like you're screaming in the wind in a hurricane, but it really does matter. And doing it together is a part of how we make sure none of us get steamrolled by all the mess.
Yeah, people are hearing it, and
Mm-hmm.
so that on the financial part, as well, because you're having to. I mean, why is it lawyers? Because you're fighting this. I mean, if you're not in court, how are
Every,
you having to fight this?
every subpoena has to be responded to, right? Everything they try to craft against me has to be rebutted. It's like, and we also, with all the people that we're trying to work with, like, say you're working with the governor and he wants to know what is the case from the Oklahoma Department of Securities versus what's the real truth from agriculture adjustment law, and you got to be able to answer the question. And being able to explain these things to the allies and the politicians has required us to build legal teams to be able to put the pieces together. And we've done a good job at that. I mean, the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund is actually asked to see our legal research when the case is over, because
They're great.
talking about it verbally, we've made some really good headway on bringing forward some of these legal precepts that have gotten lost over the 50 years of middle scale agriculture getting forgotten. But all that stuff it's expensive because there's no real expert to understand middle scale adjustment law. So you have to have a team of multiple lawyers, finding ones who are curious enough and intelligent enough. And your audience is probably similar to mine, where they're not going to be freaked out when we saying this, but I think 80 or 90% of the lawyers who graduate our institutions or higher education institutions are extremely left leaning. And
Mhm.
so these more freedom-oriented, conservative-type situations, you already got a really small pool of lawyers to draw from.
True.
And then you're going down to ones who are interested in agriculture, understand agriculture, historical traditions, and financial law. Like, you're
Right.
getting down to administrative law and like civil administrative processes versus just criminal. You're getting to a very small pool you're fishing in, and you have
True.
to have a couple
True.
of them working
There's a
together to
lot of
figure
there's
things
a lot
out.
of room for somebody to go to school to to be a part of that. That's
Yeah,
good.
and so that's driven up legal costs really fast. And I've also just had to do a lot of that work myself
Mm,
without paying myself, which is harming my business pretty substantially. And
sure.
then add on top of that the financial duress of, luckily it's not caused me any harm because our herd share community all really truly knows each other. We all have pretty deep friendships. And even some of our local cooperative ranches, like we sell our steers to a local grass finisher who backgrounds and finishes them and takes them direct to consumer. And as the situation's gotten more and more public, even our cooperative ranches that we work with have started reaching out to me like, hey, like, if the government really charges you and comes after you, like, is there a chance the government's going to try to claw back the cattle you sell me? And
Ah,
I don't think there's any chance of that at all. But this is what these harassments by these agencies do, is it just throws a
yeah,
wet blanket over everything, and you have to take the time to explain it, to defend yourself, to encourage people, and it scares people away from working with you,
sure,
all
sure.
of which has real cost and causes real duress on our community and business.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we're in year 5 here of starting up a ranch, scaling it inside of a broken industry where nobody's making money in the first place, pushing the bleeding edge of regenerative agriculture, and then
mhm,
having to go into the kind of legal and political situation that a really well-funded nonprofit should be handling. And we burn more budget than a lot of the nonprofits that should be doing this even have.
mhm.
Luckily, because we have the public support to sustain it, but
Right.
it's gonna be hairy seeing how far we actually can survive it. I'm hoping that we can continue to draw in more donations and support.
Yeah. Yeah. We hope you can continue to get that so your people don't forget. And that's another reason, we just need to keep this out there so people know what's going on. You can get more support and, hopefully put an end to that quickly and educate some people, in the meantime. So I'm going to kind of end this with, so if, when people look back on this situation here, what do you hope that people will remember, not necessarily about the investigation, but about what we're trying to build here?
That's a great question.
Because it'll be over. I mean, yeah, you've got some great people in your corner, and we're optimistic about that. But it's rough in the meantime. But what do you think people will?
I hope that we can shine a light where, following in the footsteps of Christ, that he learned obedience through the things that he suffered. That faithfulness to following the pillar of cloud and fire like Moses did in the wilderness, right? That we're trying to save our country and get it back to the country we dream of. And it's a battle bigger than any of us, and we can't do it alone.
Yeah,
And my hope is that the light of people seeing us do this as our small community can be an inspiration for showing other people how to go with God and also do it not alone.
that's great. So you're bringing a light to that because we're not warring against flesh and blood, right?
Agreed. Agreed,
Hmm.
agreed.
Yeah. So, well, thank you, Joel. Thank you for taking your time out. I know you have things, and it's hot right now, so I'm sure you have more things to do than the ranch when it's this hot. Um, Kind of murderous hot right now, and but I really appreciate you taking your time out. And again, I just wanted people to know your story, and it's been a pleasure talking to you, and very very informative. I didn't know, I knew some stuff, I didn't know all that. So I appreciate you sharing that. And we'll get some of these links and put that on the bottom of the show notes so people can learn more about you and follow you and maybe even help you financially, and support you if they want to. So
I appreciate it. Thanks
yeah,
for having me on.
thanks, Joel. We just wanted to take a minute to recognize our sponsor, Azure Standard. What began as a small organic farm founded by David Stelzer has become a natural health food distributor to communities all across the nation. Azure provides a full complement of healthy, non-GMO, organic foods and natural products at family-friendly prices. We love buying from Azure every month, and we encourage you to check them out at azurestandard.com and be sure to use Ozark 15 at your checkout for a discount. Thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you at the Ozarks Homesteading Expo September 4th and 5th, 2026 in Marshfield, Missouri. For details and to get your tickets, go to ozarkshomesteading.com. We can't wait to see you.